Staking Summit. What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Filipe. I'm the Chief of DeFi at Ankr.
Nice. And what did you come to the Staking Summit for? What were your expectations?
Well, for the staking summit, like Ankr is actually a pioneer in liquid staking. We were the first to market to launch ETH liquid staking in December 2020. And yeah, coming to the staking summit, it's actually like a great opportunity to meet like other validators in the space, other liquid stakers. I think there is an amazing concentration of like very specific talents specifically about staking. And we really wanted to get that exposure, to interact, with the community and validators. So yeah, I think really it's an unparalleled event. Like if you really want to get in touch with validators and node providers and everything, I think this is really the right crypto event to be.
Yeah, no, great stuff. So tell us a bit about like how you foresaw liquid staking, because as you said, now you guys pioneered it. Actually, most people don't know that you guys were doing it before Lido. Talk to us, like what was it that highlighted that to you, and looking back, like how did you guys know?
Yeah, so basically liquid staking, it was originally created to provide secondary market liquidity for staked ETH, which cannot be unstaked still now after the merge happened. So basically when I was then hired about 6 months later, my job, it was really to expand liquid staking to other chains, and very quickly I realized that building liquid staking on other chains, you cannot say that it's about secondary market liquidity when on, let's say, Matic, you have like unbundling period of a few days only, right? So there must be something more interesting than just providing short-term liquidity in the secondary markets. So then it's where the second narrative comes into place, which is more about DeFi composability, right? And basically about the DeFi composability is like when you delegate stake to a node, you're not contributing for TVL on a specific chain. However, if you use liquid staking, you are now contributing as TVL, right, for a specific chain, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously if you get integrations from other DeFi protocols for liquid staking in lending, in CDPs, in DEXs, everything. Yeah, exactly. It just gets multiplied, right? All that TVL, and you have multiple like TVL multiplication, right? So it's not necessarily bad, right? It's not necessarily like some sort of Ponzi or not. It's just like an accounting thing. Like a TVL is an accounting metric that represents an opportunity to charge fees for a specific financial service.
Yes.
Right. So that's how I try to rationalize it.
To look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'm originally from wealth management. I did that for 8 years. In wealth management, it's all about net new money. Like, where do we get money from clients? And then it's just like a leading indicator for banks' profitability if that gets invested into financial products and so on. So it's just an accounting metric, like it's working.
It's like an assets under management game.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. And like looking at liquid staking now, and then looking at it like when you guys started, what are some things you look back to, like, wait, why hasn't this taken off more, or maybe it's a past your expectations? What are your views on that?
No, I think we're actually quite satisfied about the industry, like using liquid staking, seeing like other liquid staking protocols on other chains popping off and so on. So I think like we reached kind of that objective of making liquid staking popular enough, and which is surprising over the last 6 months when there is layer 1 chains approaching Ankr for getting support on our RPC node network, which is our core business fundamentally. Usually it's like the first step for a new chain, like, okay, we need developers, so let's create a public RPC so that developers can use it. And now their interesting is that they're asking liquid staking first.
Wow.
Because they understand that it's kind of a growth hack, right?
Yeah.
Because you can fundamentally just create your own chain, you have a token, and if you can just use your token through liquid staking, it creates like a first layer of TVL.
Exactly.
Right. So
it's like a bootstrap.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have everyone begging you, hey, I'm going to do a DEX or a lending platform on your new chain, and obviously you want to make sure that you get TVL, so liquid staking can be a TVL, and there is like all that ecosystem around liquid staking that I think now many participants are understanding like very well. So I think this is going into like a direction where it's getting more and more democratized, the access to liquid staking. There is still maybe some challenges to overcome. For example, providing liquidity into a DEX for liquid staking is still capital inefficient, because when you deposit, for example, Matic liquid staking into a DEX liquidity pool, half is no longer staked because you have Matic and Matic liquid staking. So you're losing like half of your staking rewards, and then you need to have trading fees and farming rewards to compensate the fact that you're like not staking 100% of it. So I mean, we're trying through partners to get a little bit more creative. Like, what if you lend Matic in the liquidity pool so that you're earning lending interest and staking rewards, right? So you reduce a little bit that capital inefficiency, but there is then still other inefficiencies, like on Aave, for example. You can borrow Matic at 6%, the staking rewards are 6%, but lending interest is only 2%. So why is it so low? It's just the interest rate model is not adapted to liquid staking, right? So it's a little bit like issuing a bond, and you're not taking into consideration that the central bank has a reference rate, and they're increasing interest rates, decreasing interest rates. You're just coming up with some interest rate model, not taking that into consideration. So that's like not very logical. So we're trying to solve that through isolated lending through partners, which...
And are you guys the first ones to do that?
We did that on Midas Capital. So it's a small isolated lending platform on BNB chain. So we created the first isolated lending market where we indexed the BNB borrowing interest to the BNB liquid staking rewards, so APY. So basically we changed the optimal utilization rates. On Aave, it's, for example, 45%, and if there is 45% of the Matic in the pool being borrowed, then the borrowing interest will increase much more significantly. So here we're taking a different approach, a bit more aggressive, which is let's assume that 75 or 80% is the optimal utilization. So only after 80% of the pool being borrowed, we will start to increase borrowing interest, so that, well, the pool doesn't run dry, right? Otherwise it's like a bank run, right? And therefore it means that the lending interest will mechanically be higher, because if you deposit like 1,000 Matic and 80% are borrowed, well, your lending interest is then obviously much bigger than if there is only 45% of the pool that is being borrowed, right? So that's the kind of thing we're doing, but there is still a challenge, which is like, where are then the BNB or Matic lending supply coming from? Right? So that's where, when I was mentioning the capital inefficiencies of DEX liquidity pools for liquid staking specifically, like instead of lending then the Matic into Aave, when you have a Matic liquid staking Matic liquidity pool, maybe you lend to the isolated lending market. So then you just incentivize liquidity like once on the DEX level, but then basically you have the same TVL go to the DEX and to the lending platform.
It's a double win,
that's
really smart. That's so interesting. And
so there is many things that need to be like improved on that end.
And does that take like the partnership of both the DEX and you guys, or how does that work? So you can't just do it yourself, right?
That's actually like the challenge, is that since it's an ecosystem and you want like liquid staking to be integrated with others, and it's not just like, oh yes, a TVL gets multiplied and we're glad to work with each other. You realize then that, you know, some protocols are actually behind other protocols and they form kind of a cluster, and they have their own interest. Maybe they're also building liquid staking, which is something that also happened. Like we're naively like approaching some DEX is like, hey, let's partner, and then you realize that they're building liquid staking, which is fine. But so these partnerships is important, and you need to trust the team. So, but it doesn't just happen automatically. So
there's a lot of steps in between.
And that's very tricky, right, for Ankr. And I think this is what Lido did. I mean, amazingly, right? They were very aggressive to grow and so on, and they get like a huge place now. into DeFi, but for us, like we're still like infrastructure, and we try not to be too much degen, right, into the DeFi game, right, into the rewards, and we don't really want to dilute our Ankr token, which is a utility token to consume nodes, to consume RPC nodes. So we rather try to solve these fundamental issues, inefficiencies with our partners. We're not necessarily making money by basically solving these issues, and very quickly we believe that our competitors will then apply the same stuff if the market says that it makes sense. But it's stuff that needs to be done to make it more capital efficient. So then if you make liquid staking more capital efficient, like you end up like commoditizing it even more, right? So that's where I think the white label liquid staking will sooner or later come, and then you understand that if you start to think about liquid staking white label solution, like who should do it? Not everyone. You need to have a competitive hedge. So either you have a lot of users or you have a lot of TVL. But it's not TVL, it's just staked assets. But if you, what if you can make that amount of staked assets into a TVL, right? So then you have all the DEXs and everyone begging you for depositing TVL with you and so on and so forth. So you need to have that hedge. And if you think now about pure liquid staking protocols, the issue is that they do not have a competitive edge about the TVL. They're just throwing away governance tokens.
Is that like Cardano?
I mean the liquid staking protocols itself, right?
Oh, so you're not referring to native like liquid staking in a network?
No. I mean, usually I'm more referring to. I will not mention names, but like Lido, for example, right, is a liquid staking provider. But what if you try to replicate them? So then, for liquid staking providers specifically, if you don't have a competitive edge in TVL or in terms of users, your only strategic bet is to give additional rewards to incentivize people to use you, right? So that's the part where it gets a little bit more difficult to compete. And
but that's so interesting. And so I want to, sorry for interrupting there. Like, what's your opinion on like degen liquid staking strategies? Because like we know how degenerate people can be, but I haven't seen much of that. But what I have seen is people speaking against that and saying, it's so reckless, risky. But you can't stop the market from doing that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Is that like a recipe for disaster? Like it's going to bring the whole house of cards tumbling? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think like basically if you think about DeFi protocols like a little bit more like fintech, so one of the rules and key metrics of success is like what is your cost of acquisition per user, right? And if you want to be successful to basically scale your fintech like infrastructure, you need to have like rather a low cost of acquisition per user if you really want to scale. So that's why you see some fintechs, then they end up being bought by other companies that have a lot of users. So their cost of acquisition per user, for let's say Amazon, imagine they buy a fintech company and they start offering financial services hypothetically. Obviously, if they have like millions of users, they can very, very easily make them consume that fintech product, right? But if that fintech product is alone, they need to do marketing to acquire users. So in DeFi, we took like a shortcut, which is let's just mint tokens to acquire users. So we have no like sort of discipline about what is my cost of acquiring a user in DeFi. I'm just throwing away farming rewards, and nobody is really assessing like what is the cost of acquisition per user, right? And it's even mercenary, right? Because it's so frictionless. You use a product, you can leave. If you open a bank account, it's painful, it's a process. You will think twice before trying another bank. You will not shop around banks, right? If you convince to have someone to open a bank account with you, it was difficult, but at least you feel confident that even if the user is not extremely satisfied, it needs to be extremely dissatisfied to try another bank, right? In DeFi, it's different.
You just jump around.
Yeah, you just jump around, right? So it's mercenary, like users kind of, if you bring them for the wrong reason, just for the short-term rewards, and then at whatever moment there is someone else copying your protocol, making a small tweak, improvement, whatever, and higher rewards, and they are at the risk to just move elsewhere, right? So yeah, that's basically the DeFi space, where not having discipline about the cost of acquisition per user is a problem. And I think the critics about all the yield farming and everything, it comes fundamentally a little bit from that, where everyone understands it's not necessarily very sustainable, that part specifically, and that's why we're not doing it aggressively and trying to solve these underlying capital inefficiency issues, because you rather want to have like delegate stakers that consider liquid staking eventually, but they consider it that they have a higher smart contract risk on liquid staking and not necessarily more rewards. But the main reason it should not be yield farming rewards, it should be you have more financial flexibility on your staked assets. You can borrow against it if you need, and so on and so forth. So really trying to come up with financial use cases that make sense economically, and they're not just enabled by some short-term rewards. And we did refuse some integrations, like leverage liquidity pool, stuff like that, where you realize that the cost of borrowing some asset to take leverage is higher than liquid staking rewards.
And it doesn't.
And you're like, yeah, no, sorry, we're not going to spend time doing that kind of integration.
And what's your thoughts on like the uptake of liquid staking in all of these different like ecosystems? Like obviously Ethereum is obviously a lot higher than the others for obvious reasons, because you can't get it out of the staking contract. But on other networks, the uptake is like 3 or 4% of the total stake value is liquid stake. Why? Why is it so low? And what are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part?
So like the uptake of liquid staking on other L1s are relatively low. Why? Why do you think so?
I think it is like there is many like institutional stakers that do like run validator nodes. They do accept delegate staking, and liquid staking has two inconvenience parts when compared to delegate staking, or just like staking through a validator node. The first one is the additional smart contract risk, and the second part is like KYC AML. So there is, for example, Coinbase that are doing now ETH liquid staking, and liquid staking, you need to see it, the process of staking and redeeming a liquid staking token is like the primary market. So you can argue that, let's do KYC AML, and then maybe more institutional clients can consider liquid staking because they were considering the regulatory risk as a hurdle. So it's still unclear, but you can do a step into that direction. However, you can also argue that letting the liquid staking token to be freely traded in DeFi is like the secondary market. And the secondary market is not permission. It's not regulated. So, someone from Iran or whatever might end up buying the liquid staking token, and indirectly you have someone from Iran that invests in your staking pool from Coinbase. So doesn't it defeat the initial purpose of regulating it? So, you can consider it's a smart move where you're doing a step into the regulatory step. So you have one step in their side, but you have one step in DeFi, and you're just like trying to be like the main point of contact and be important in the space by like basically balancing those conversations. But fundamentally, that kind of use case, it doesn't really make much sense. So I believe in the future we will rather go into permission chains or permission side chains, and then you can really have a fully regulated financial ecosystem if you want to. With the benefits of DeFi, but just you need to basically give access to people when you enter the chain. You basically check the tickets of the event, right, for example, but once you are inside, you don't need to show your ID every single time, right, and you all share the same KYC requirements if you are on a specific side chain, for example. So we believe personally it's something that will make more sense. But basically technology risk, regulatory risk might explain why there is still not a massive liquid staking adoption when compared to the total amount staked across the board.
No, those are great answers, and that makes a lot of sense. So looking forward in 2 or 3 years, do you expect that liquid staking percentage should be a lot higher than it is now?
Yes, so I think to tackle the regulatory risk, so you can for sure do KYC AML. I think with permission sidechains or permission chains, you can definitely create a safe secondary market environment to trade liquid staking. On the technological side, there is some risks about the smart contract risk, but as this gets like more battle tested, and as we will certainly move into in the industry into liquid staking white label solutions, where it makes sense if you have a lot of users or a lot of TVL, well then the technological risk is lower, because if you saw yourself that there is like tons of audits on liquid staking, it's battle tested in DeFi, I mean, you don't need to worry about the smart contracts like keys, because it's like, yeah, take the keys. You're concerned and you can bring 50 million. I mean, yeah, sure, we do liquid staking for you, take the keys, you know, that's it, it's yours. We will just monitor it for you. But so that can, I think, bring much more adoption in general. But then it brings the challenge, right, where you might end up having so many different versions of liquid staking, from, I don't know, Binance, FTX,
you have all these derivatives
Kraken,
and you don't know, and it like, you know, what's the word? Like it splits the liquidity, right? Because then it's split.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's a big problem. Like, if you don't
you don't need. I mean, if you do liquid staking white label solutions, imagine like Ankr does hypothetically liquid staking white label solution, and we have 20 clients. So we share the same technological stack. So why not trusting each other, which is like, it's exactly the same liquidity. So you need to have liquidity on the secondary markets, but you can share the same liquidity pool, because like you do not want to share liquidity with liquid staking if you do not trust the technological stack of the competitor. If they get a hack or something, then the shared liquidity pool like is gone. But if you trust each other and you have the same risk, I think there is no reason not to share the amount of liquidity. But there is other stuff that you can do actually, like unstake.
Like I know in Polkadot, like with all of their liquid staking derivatives, they like aggregated into one that represents everything underneath that. Have you looked into something like that?
I mean, we've been looking into, for example, flash and stake pools, where some people can just deposit some Matic, and those Matic are always available to be swapped at a fixed rate against a fixed fee. So you just swap against the redemption price of liquid staking. So then it gives always like a flash and stake option. And flash and stake, you charge maybe 0.3 instead of 0.04 on a traditional swap with an uncertain price, or on stake of no unstake fee if you wait the unbundling period. So if you just charge 0.3%, you do make returns. And then whenever someone is basically making that, technically it's a swap somehow, right, with a kind of a private pool. And then you just need to make sure that the manager of that pool is unstaking, and in 4 days in Matic, right, it's resets the pool, so you have again 100% Matic. But what if you're basically using part of the liquid staking instead of doing 100% staking or delegate staking into a validator node? What if you do 95% delegate staking into a validator node and 5% depositing into a flash and stake pool?
That's interesting.
Well, then you can further decrease, you know, the flash and stake fee a little bit, and then you really like significantly improve the liquidity, because if you want to have 5% of all your liquid staking TVL into DEX liquidity, it's challenging, right? It's not, I mean, you need to pay farming rewards and everything, and the trading fees are very low. And there isn't necessarily many like trading volume in all these random DEX, stable swap pools and so on. So that will probably be the most ideal solution potentially. But even if it doesn't mean that you don't need to have DEX liquidity pools. But then you can do eventually some arbitrage as well, right? Where you can just like buy liquid staking at a higher discount on DEXs, and you can flash on stake. So finally you have an arbitrage opportunity and not just a trading opportunity where you buy it at this discount, but then you can only unstake and wait a few days. So creating like more options with different risk profiles, risk return profiles, it makes the ecosystem more rich, so that you have more options, more trading volume, more adoption.
Yeah.
So and we believe all of that is like the right way to tackle the issues of the low adoption of liquid staking, even though many people talk about it right now, is to really solve these underlying issues, and instead of just giving farming rewards and hoping that people will just come, right?
Yeah. Wow. No, that's very insightful. I mean, I love this talk, and you're obviously like deep into liquid staking. So tell the community, how can they get involved with Ankr? Like if you're hearing about liquid staking and you're wondering like, wow, this is next level, how can they get involved?
So yeah, just go on Ankr.com, click on stake now. You will see a dashboard with all our different liquid staking options. And after you stake, you have a dashboard where you can see your staked assets. So you can then add stake, unstake, you can see how much yield you're expected to receive per year. So it's really a multi-chain kind of staking experience and not siloed.
Yeah.
So yeah, very easy. It's permissionless, connect your wallet, you can access to it at any time. So, and then we have a DeFi dashboard as well, where we list all the DeFi integrations that we have.
Nice.
So that it's like easier to identify all the options that you have.
Great. And one final question is, in your view, what do you think is the most overrated network or overrated project in all of crypto? Yeah, interested to hear.
Network or project?
Project, like the token, like any coin.
I mean, I think it would be unfair to cite some names, but I think like liquid staking protocols itself, like pure liquid staking, right? It's eventually like overrated a little bit right now, a lot of hype, and like fundamentally liquid staking is a low margin product. If you want to attract more TVL, you probably need to like have like referral fees where you share even more the revenues with others, and that's like a commoditization, which will result only in white label liquid staking, which is like the absolute commoditization of a product. So, and then it only makes sense for you to be in that space if you're running the validator nodes in the back end, and it's a way for you to enhance your validator profitability. Either you have a lot of users that have liquid staking and have more utility, or you have a lot of TVL. But if you have none of D3, and some providers have, in my opinion, none of D3, it will be very difficult to maintain the market cap, of their tokens or governance tokens.
Yeah. All right, but thank you for your insights. Really appreciate it. Great interview. And thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.